All right, let's talk about the article first. Things that maybe stuck out to you from reading it. Here we're talking about the pages in the textbook. I know I said article, but anything stick out to you from those pages?
The statement that most academic writing is based on reading.
Yeah, you'll notice, and if you haven't already, we should. We always pair reading and writing, and when we look at academic writing on, especially literature, composition, and this kind of stuff, it's always taking a piece of literature. It's always taking a speech, some kind of document, and basing it forward. So yeah, that connection is really strong. So we do have that natural bit to it. That's why we've said some people want to dismiss fiction. Oh, we can't argue about fiction. We can, because there are many ways we can approach it. When we look at how the article is framed, it's really looking at that idea of when we say argument here. When we're talking about literature, we're talking about taking a stand on the meaning of the text. For our level, what we are going to use as our way to get into that is to look at it thematically. How do we see the themes that are presented as guiding the meaning and creating this argument? When we approach literature studies in this way, we do what's called close reading. CLO. Sometimes it's an SE, sometimes it's presented as a ZE if they want to be fancy. When we talk about that, what we're saying is we will only use the text as our basis for argument. We're not going to bring in things that exist necessarily outside of the text. The text has all the meanings in it that we need. And so by examining it in different ways, we can find what Fitzgerald wanted us to understand through it, what the arguments he was presenting are. Here's what's great about that opportunity. We've said, I could dig Fitzgerald up and work his skull like a puppet, but he really can't answer the questions about what his intentions were. That gives you the opportunity to come and to say, based on what I see in the text and how I can link this evidence, I can make an argument about what his intentions were. And we can validate your argument because you're using the text to support it. That means we can get lots of different meanings out of it as long as the text is going to support what you're seeing. Now, we lean into this heavily in literature studies because it gives us the opportunity to approach texts in very different ways and present different perspectives on it. What College Board does is they kind of wind this and they go, okay, we're going to lean really heavy into this thematic ideal as a way to show what students know and understand. So what I'm going to show you is what does their end game look like? On next year's literature test, just like this year's test, there are 3 essays on the second portion of the test that you have 2 hours to answer. There is only one of them that you can really prep for, and it's this one that we're going to look at. On this question, what they give you is a broad, thematically based question. You, as the student and the test taker, bring your understanding and knowledge to bear here by choosing a work that, from your perspective, has a way to answer the question. So here, I think this is 2009, was the question that appeared on the test. They said a symbol is an object, action, or event that represents something or that creates a range of associations beyond itself. Most of you are going, duh, it's the definition of a symbol. In literary works, a symbol can express an idea, clarify meaning, or enlarge literal meaning. And again, you're going, duh, I know this. You're telling me that that's what they ask students at the end of the year? Here's what they asked them to do. Select a novel or play and focusing on one symbol, write an essay analyzing how that symbol functions in the work and what it reveals about the characters or themes of the work as a whole. So yes, at the end of the year in 2009, students that took this test had to write an essay discussing one book that they've read or one play that has a symbol in it, what the symbol means, and how it affects meaning in the work. That's it. And you're going, I could do that right now. We're going to do that right now. What we're going to do over the next 2 days to kind of look at how do we argue about this is we're going to break this down into how would we construct an essay? How are we going to capture our thinking about it? And that's kind of the little thinking guide that I have linked there. We're going to work through that using this question as a way to do. And tomorrow I'm going to point you multiple questions and we're going to practice. Now you notice they do put a list on the test. This list is designed for students that maybe get to the test and absolutely just blank. Their mind is just struggling. They put lots of examples of different works that have prominent symbols on here, but you notice The Great Gatsby isn't listed. That doesn't mean you can't write about it. You can write about anything you want on the test now. If you want to try to game them, and you're not going to, and be like, I'm gonna write about the Hunger Games, you won't, because it's a terrible decision to make. We'll talk more about that next year. But you can write about whatever. And so here, they're just trying to give suggestions to students that hit this and their brain just, turns to mush. They're like, ugh. We're going to work through how would we answer this question for Gatsby. So we're going to do that together. You should have pulled up that document that's linked, and if you make a copy, you can fill it out. We're going to kind of work through it. And the process, what I call this process is speed dating. We're not writing the whole essay. We're not even writing a formal outline. We're just going to kind of capture our thinking on how would we approach an essay here. And it helps us to see how do we build an argument about a piece of literature. So we know we have to pick a symbol. We know we're going to write about Gatsby. That's definite. So let's talk through options, because again, this is brainstorming. What are prominent symbols we could write this essay about? Green light. What are other symbols in the work that we could write this about? Valley of Ashes. Any other symbols you can think of? I do. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg. Any other symbols at all that you're like, well, we could write it about this?
Gatsby's mansion?
Yeah. Anything else coming to mind? This is brainstorming, so I don't want to cut off if you have an idea. We want to capture it, and I'll show you why. Okay, so let's take even just these four. That's fine. We know well enough that when we're brainstorming, the purpose is to get the ideas out, because then it gives us the idea, the option, and the ability to eliminate. If you always go with your first thinking, may not always work out well for you. But if we have the chance to sort of put it together, it helps us to form a little bit better where are we going to go. Out of these four options, remember we have to talk about themes and meanings in the work. Which one seems to be the easiest to do that with? I would agree. Now, does that mean you can't write a decent essay about how Gatsby's house represents something in the work and helps to push a theme? You absolutely could. This is where that perspective comes in. And this is the beauty of that argument piece. There are lots of ways that you can be right. There are lots of ways that you can approach it and show your understanding well. for the purposes of today, just because it's so obvious, we're going to stick here. Now we know that the question has multiple parts to it. Pick the symbol, and then what's the next part of the prompt?
Explain how it functions.
How it functions. So in other words, what does it mean? Symbols have a definite meaning to them. What does the green light mean in the work? Gatsby's dream of? In a literal, this thing is about Gatsby's dream of getting Daisy back. And then we said, at the end of the book, it transitions to being a bigger thematic piece by talking about the American dream. If we look at the question, that's part of what this wants us to do, is to not just say, hey, what does the symbol literally mean? How does it function? But also to then talk about how it affects characters and themes in the work. We know that this is the direction we're going to have to go already. And we're like, okay, I see the roadmap. I've got that. We've now got to start to brainstorm. If we have this general approach, okay, that's great. That's going to help us with our direction and forming our thesis. We've now got to see, how do we build this meaning into the text? To do that, we're not going to have our book in front of us. On the AP test, you won't. When we do this next week as our assessment for the book, we're going to do this closed book, because I don't want you to spend time flipping through the book and wasting time. Instead, we're going to show our understanding of the book by using key scenes, by using character details, by using big things that are definite from the book without it being so specific that it's a quotation. Can you think of moments that we talk about the green light and we build this meaning in for what it represents?
Gatsby saying that he could relive the past.
How do we build meaning into the symbol or the theme with this scene?
During Gatsby's conversation with Nick, he keeps talking about how, yes, you can repeat the past and how we can go back to when life is better than now, I guess. No.
So he sees the past as better. Why?
Because he had Daisy.
How does this phrase help to build the meaning in? Yeah.
Before he actually got Daisy again, the green light was kind of a symbol of the past and what he could have, I guess. And then when Daisy came in, he kind of realized that it's not the same. So he had this one idea, which was the green light and reaching out to it. But then Nick talks about how that was kind of cut off or messed up whenever he actually met Daisy.
Okay.
I don't know.
So you're talking about a separate scene, and we can list it here as evidence too. You're talking about chapter 4. You're talking about the moment where Daisy puts her arm through Gatsby's when they're looking out, and he says you could see the light, and that his count of enchanted objects had diminished by 1. Is that what you're thinking?
So the green light, it kind of lost meaning because he finally had Daisy.
It's sort of lost meaning.
Maybe the green light has something to do with
my favorite artist wrote a song called Green Light.
Yes.
And it was about her being in love with her producer who was in a relationship at the time.
Yes.
And the green light they wrote together, it was about him giving her the green light once he broke up with the girlfriend.
Okay, so like
So maybe
a
the green
stoplight, like a go,
yes,
right? Okay.
That's what I'm thinking when I like read this. It's like he's the green light means that like it's Daisy saying like, yes, I'm ready. Like, I want to be in a relationship with you. I want to go back to that. Like obviously it's not that,
Yeah.
but in my mind,
I can see where your mind is connecting. Absolutely. And this is a great way to talk about sort of that window of argument that we have. And we said the text is going to inform us when we're right because we can make that argument based on the text. This is the only thing that I would point to you. It's not a bad read, but where does Daisy seem to lean into that? Now, yes, after we have this scene, we do see her connected with him. But as the book goes on, it doesn't continue in that way.
right? But
Yeah.
I'm saying like the green light could be like him waiting for her to give him the green light, and she would never does.
Okay, that's going back here a little bit more. And I think one of the things that we can talk about with this idea of you can't repeat the past is that there's a stubbornness to Gatsby. He believes the impossible can happen. And so if we look at sort of what this light represents, here it loses meaning because he's got what he wants, but he's more upset at what he's lost in the magic of it. And here it kind of comes back to that magic again. He really believes, no, I can make this happen. He believes things that aren't true. He thinks that Daisy never loved Tom, only to then be smacked in the face multiple times in chapter 7 with like, yeah, dude, she does. It's not all about you. Notice here what we've got. Outer layer here, we have definite evidence. Hey, what are the moments in the book that help to bring that meaning forward? And then here, as we move in, this is our commentary. This is where we're not just describing what literally happens in the book and summarizing, but we're connecting the meaning. What does that green light mean? How does it affect the characters? To eventually get to how does it develop this bigger theme? Everybody following kind of the thought process and what we have here? Because it's really important with this idea of arguing about literature. In order to form the argument, we can't just repeat the story. Remember, the purpose of it isn't to write a book report where you tell me what happens. The purpose of an argument is to present a perspective. What is that meaning in the text and how does it come across thematically? So here we've got two moments that do. Could we list others? 100%. But I want to move on just so that we don't lose this to how do we turn this around to the theme? Notice what they do at the very end of the book. Just like what we're doing here in the essay, we would present evidence to show how does this thing build meaning? How do these moments help us to understand what the green light means? We can use our conclusion rather than just repeating stuff to get to and broaden the context. How does it help us to see this idea of the American dream? Does Gatsby get his dream in the book? No. And if you think about it, not only does he not get it, but he dies because of his like stubbornness. He still believes up to that day that he gets shot. Oh no, Daisy's gonna call me. Like, come, I'll be in the pool, come get me. Just like we present at the end of the book, that green light being over there, trying to get to it, just like people try to get to the American dream. And they use that boats against the current thing. And as the book goes on, we broaden that context out. No longer is it just, hey, look, the green light represents Gatsby. It's like the green light represents all of us. And in watching Gatsby fail to get his dream, even though we understand he's trying to get something that's impossible, he's got the wrong dreams in mind. In watching him try to do it, it's almost like none of us have a hope of getting there right now. And we said it sort of broadens in and brings in that whole lost generation perspective, right? That whole generation kind of felt the same way, where maybe not right now, but hopefully one day we can get there, which is where it brings in that votes against the current thing. We could also make an argument that the American dream is a promise of the past. That as the book presents it, Gatsby is this romantic figure that shouldn't exist anymore. Society has moved away from the romantic. Gatsby's dreams are all based in the past. He wants to do something that's impossible. The American dream could be seen as an ideal that is in the past. It's something that none of us can get, but we all seem to have it dangled out in front of us. Do you think that your parents' dream is what you should be trying to get? Gatsby kind of looks at it here, Fitzgerald, Gatsby, Nick, all of them, as though the American dream is this promise that was founded a long time ago that we've all been striving to, but it's back there. Like it doesn't reflect who we are. It's this promise of America that didn't come forward. Think about how it brings in Thomas Paine too. How many of you are like, ooh, I like that. Ooh. Notice what we did here. Did we write the essay? But did we create a thought map that more or less, if you sat down, you could write an essay based on this? That's what we're practicing in the next couple of days. We're prepping to get you ready next week to write an argument about Gatsby and to show me your understanding of the book. Now, if you wrote, and I'm going to use your example here, if you wrote that bit about the green light in there, am I going to go, oh my God, you don't understand anything, fail? No. If you can support your thinking with what you see in the book, I'm not going to necessarily invalidate it right away, but I'm going to give you the credit for standing out there and trying to support it. What's most important is this part. Hey, how do we look at it with evidence and commentary? We're going to practice this tomorrow with a few other quotes and give us a chance to kind of look at how do we get that thinking in line? How do we see that supporting bit and work toward it? So that's tomorrow. Questions? Everybody